Greetings, everyone, and welcome to We Are ACEDS live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. My name is Mike Quartararo. I am the president of ACEDS, and if you're done dancing, we'll get into it. Today, we are going to be joined momentarily by Bill Piwonka, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Exterro. ACEDS has worked with Exterro for many, many years. They're one of our biggest partners, affiliate partners, and we love that relationship. And so anytime Exterro has news or a new offering or just anything we want to chat about in the industry, we want to share it with our members and our followers. Bill Piwonka, please join us and welcome to We Are ACEDS.
Hey, thank you, Mike. It's great to be here with you again.
Thanks for making time for us today. For those who don't know, maybe it makes sense to just give us a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Exterro, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. I mean, you've already said it, right? I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Exterro. So my role is to oversee all things marketing, from our content to our attendance at shows like Legal Tech and ACC and ILTA and all those other things. So oversee all of that, and out there trying to educate everybody on the value of e-discovery and bringing it in-house and optimizing your process and all those good things that ACEDS is out doing as well.
Fantastic. All right. So big news, I guess, not the first to hear it here, but you know, for anyone who knows or follows the news and e-discovery, you should be aware that last month Exterro acquired Zapproved. Bill, tell us about this. I thought it was fascinating. Tell us about the acquisition, what led to it, how is it going, what's the strategic vision for the combination of Exterro and Zapproved?
Sure, absolutely. So like you said, this actually, I think we announced it in mid-January or so. Just time is flying by. But
I probably wrote my notes back then, and then
what people might not realize is that ironically, Zapproved and Exterro were both founded the same year, 2008, in Portland, Oregon. So, and there's no real rhyme or reason why these two companies focusing on preservation at the time, you know, were formed. It's not like Portland has a corner on all the brilliant engineers and marketers on preservation, but you know, we clearly have known one another all this time, and our founders, Monica Enan on the Zapproved side and Bobby Balachandran on the Exterro side, you know, have known each other, that we've, you know, competed, but there's always been a tremendous healthy respect for one another. And as we've grown our respective companies, there were really kind of two things that emerged. Zapproved, and I think everybody listening will agree, was just recognized for outstanding customer experience. They heavily invested in delighting customers and ensuring that all their processes were in place to ensure the success of their customers. Of course, Exterro was also, you know, we want to have successful customers as well, but we've spent a lot of our resources on our innovation engine and our engineering team. And it just became clear that joining the two companies would provide a tremendous amount of value to our joint customers. You know, from an Exterro perspective, we have a lot to learn in terms of how can we improve our customer experience and take the best practices that have been developed at Zapproved. And at the same time, the Zapproved customers now having access to a much broader set of capabilities, both within the e-discovery process, but also broader areas like privacy, cybersecurity, compliance, digital investigations, for you know, forensic investigations, digital response. So it made a lot of sense to bring these two companies together, and so far it's been going great.
Fantastic. So is there like a positioning of the product portfolio, or are they going to remain sort of separate companies for now, and then just you're still figuring it out? How ultimately what I'm asking, it's been a few weeks, how's the integration going?
The integration is going fast and furious. our on the product side, our engineering teams have been busy basically since day one, looking at what makes sense from a roadmap perspective. How do we learn from one another and build the best possible solution for our customers. We've been in contact with all of the approved customers and reassured them that their products aren't going away right now. We're having deep conversations about, from this approved customer side, what do they like about the product? What is valuable to them? How do we ensure that we maintain that going forward? Similarly, going out and sharing some of the things that Exterro does exceptionally well that Zapproved was missing in their product line, and thinking about how do we bring these two companies together? How do we deliver the value that everybody's looking for? Like I said, those conversations are happening daily and going very well at this point.
Good. And it strikes me that Zapproved was always sort of focused on, and full disclosure, folks, early Zapproved customer, Legal Hold Pro, many years ago. But they've been focused on more, I would say, on the e-discovery space specifically, as you alluded to, and of course the legal hold piece. But Exterro has always, in my mind at least, been sort of a broader offering. There was some hold, but there was also a project management piece. There was, of course, the e-discovery piece. And then more recently, you've kind of pivoted to what I will call, and it's not even recent, Bill, I don't think, you can tell us, to what we would call legal GRC, governance risk compliance. And I know there's a big push on your side. Tell our listeners a little bit, what is legal GRC? And then maybe I'll think of a follow-up question after that.
Sure. So I guess it goes back to when our CEO, Bobby, and his co-founders started Exterro. Bobby had been working at a number of very large financial institutions, insurance companies, and his role was on the IT side, hooking up all these different systems and helping the various departments in these organizations do their business work more effectively. And one of the things he looked at was, legal really didn't have that kind of platform. It didn't have something that everybody was using to maximize productivity and optimize what they were doing. Now, as I said, we got started and you can't boil the ocean. So he was very focused initially on a workflow optimization, business process management product. And then very quickly we released our preservation product. But his vision always was, there's so much risk as well as value in the data that an organization has, right? And clearly every organization, if they can understand and maximize the value of their data, they're going to compete more effectively in their market. At the same time, there's a tremendous amount of risk for it. And if you think about what's happened over the last 10 to 20 years, it's only been magnified. You think about some of these macro trends of new legislation always coming out and in particular with a focus on privacy. How are you collecting data? How are you managing it? How are you protecting it? Are you deleting it? Are you doing the things that you need to do from a compliance perspective with regards to sensitive data? And then you've got another macro trend of the just constant barrage of the bad guys trying to breach you, ransomware, denial of service, whatever it might be, right? And what we've seen in legal is an evolution and an expansion of the role. Whether or not you think that privacy, you work for an organization where privacy reports directly into the GC or CLO, or if compliance reports directly, it really doesn't matter, because there are roles and responsibilities of people within legal that they have to do for various reasons, laws. E-discovery is, nobody loves e-discovery. We do it because it's the law, right? If you think about a breach, nobody would expect a lawyer or somebody in the legal department to manage the incident response and, figure out what the bad guys did, how they got in, what do you have to do. But legal has a responsibility depending on what was potentially compromised and where, if that data, that compromised data included personally sensitive data, whose data did that belong to, what jurisdiction do they live in, and then what reporting and notifications requirements are triggered. You think about privacy, there's, part of GDPR, CPRA, number of different other global as well as state laws. Consumers and employees have the right to say, what data do you have on me and how are you using it? Well, you think about that workflow. Okay, you have to be able to take the request. You have to be able to verify that Mike is who Mike says he is, because if Bill says he's Mike and you give him Mike's data, you've just really done a bad thing. You need to have some workflow to make sure if Mike's an employee that it doesn't go to somebody in privacy or IT, that it goes to HR. But after that, what do? Well, you got to go find the data. You have to collect the data. You have to review the data. You have to redact out anything that's not related to Mike. So every email that Mike sends to Bill has Bill's PII on it, right? So you got to redact Bill out and then you produce it. Well, what did I just describe? I described e-discovery, right? So you can see how all these different groups that might have previously been siloed, privacy, compliance, legal ops, litigation support, are converging. Now, if Mike says, hey, I want you to delete my data. Okay, you have to do that, except with some carve-outs. Like, what if that data is under a legal hold? Or what if that data is under a retention obligation due to some other regulation somewhere in the world? So compliance and privacy and legal, they all have to come together and be able to easily do the things that they have to do. They have to comply with the law. They have, right? You have to minimize the risk to your organization. And so Exterro's vision is, because we've always really focused on the data aspect, knowing what data you have, where it resides, how much there is, who owns it, what third parties have access to it. Because if you have all that visibility and the ability to connect to those data sources, when a request for that data comes in, e-discovery request, a data access, subject access request, internal investigation, whatever it might be, you can easily and quickly respond to those requests. So we look at it as, if you're doing an internal investigation, or you're doing e-discovery, or you're doing a data subject access request, or even you're doing a breach response trying to figure out if the data has personally sensitive data, those are all uses of review technology. Yeah. Why would you go out and buy separate products for each of those things? Where if you think about it more holistically, with a platform, you can say, okay, I can leverage this technology that has the connectors to the data, gives me the visibility to the data, and I can run my business more effectively. So that's the legal GRC vision of Exterro. It's pulling together these different, very challenging business use cases, things that we know organizations are struggling with, and helping them be more effective.
Yeah, and I've been in this space for a long time, and we all kind of tend to live in our little bubbles until you really take a step back and you look at the interconnectedness of the different components in the legal space. And you referenced it, compliance. What is people in e-discovery don't think about compliance. Compliance is complying with all the rules, regulations, laws, and things that are out there. And most organizations have a whole department dedicated to doing that. But we as e-discovery professionals, we don't think about that. We're just thinking about, where's the data? How do I get to it? And what do I need to do to it? So that's
and I think that's a great distinction, because, I look at GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, as being a very big umbrella.
Yes.
Right? You have IT GRC, you have HR GRC, you have finance GRC, and the people in those parts of the organization have to know what they need to do. And so legal has to have a seat at the table because of the C, right? If you're complying with a law, you need your legal team to help advise you on that, right? So legal is always going to be part of GRC. Our distinction is, but then there are things that only the legal team or the groups that report into legal, like compliance, like privacy, like litigation support, that's their responsibility. You're not asking HR to do e-discovery or finance to do DSARs, right? So we look at legal GRC as being a very specific set of responsibilities of people within the broader legal department that they have to do as part of their jobs. And I think that's a distinction that people need to think about, because certainly you've got to have legal involved in all aspects of GRC.
Yeah, it's got to be a coordinated effort. So quick tangent, because this is always sort of on my mind. And when we talk about things like compliance, I'm struck by the fact that in Europe and other nations of the world, not just Europe, but they take a very different approach. It's not as litigious. It is more of a compliance oriented culture, right? And other parts of the world have comprehensive legislation that deals with this. Do you see a time, Bill, when the United States has any kind of comprehensive privacy, cyber compliance legislation?
Maybe, right? I mean, here's the thing. If you, from a, European perspective, if you think back to what happened, prior to World War II and what happened there are some, scars and some reasons why personal private data is so important to them, right? Now, interestingly, I saw some research that showed that the percentage of people in Europe and the US that have requested a DSAR is roughly the same, which surprised me, because I would have thought that, the US, as US citizens, we don't really care about privacy all that much if you look at it. But that being said, California has led the way with first CCPA and now CPRA. But if you look at what's going on in Connecticut, Colorado, Utah, there's biometric laws in Illinois, there's stuff going on in New York, you're starting to see a number of the states follow the lead of California. I think we can all agree that California has been the leader, but you're going to have this patchwork of different states. And at some point, it would just make sense for the federal government to come in and say, okay, here's the overarching privacy law. Now, is that something that I would predict is going to happen next year? No, right? But I think any organization that is, competing globally, you have to pay attention to what's going on with all the various privacy laws. But if you're just focused domestically, do you have consumers in California? Do you have consumers in Colorado? Do you have, unless you're a very small local business, you probably do. And so you have to pay attention to these things.
Yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to have a patchwork of 50 different
laws,
because you could be a business in one jurisdiction doing business in several others, and you've got to comply with 5 different statutes, which is just madness. You would think that business leaders would get together and press our legislative leaders for something more national or comprehensive.
I think what most organizations do is they just go to the extreme and say, okay, if I can meet the requirements of the harshest, then I'm going to be good for the ones that are less harsh.
Yeah, that's probably right. Okay, so thank you for sharing your thoughts and perspective on that. How exactly is Exterro sort of meeting the legal GRC needs of the corporate legal consumer?
It gets back to what I was describing. We start with an enterprise class comprehensive data inventory that's going to tell you all these things. From a privacy perspective, it's going to identify where your data is being transferred from, what different legislation is being triggered as a result of your data transfers, help you with your records of processing activity. It's going to give that, that foundation of your privacy program. But just as importantly, as I said, the ability to know where your data is, not just from like a survey methodology of, what data are you using in marketing? Where do you store it? That sort of thing. But also having the connectors to go out and both confirm what's in the inventory, but also find data that people might have forgotten about, verify what's in your data inventory, give you the scope of what's there. Because you think about it, if a server gets breached and the only PII is the birthdays of my marketing team, not great for us, but very different compliance issue than if it's a couple terabytes of consumer health information, right?
Right.
But so we've got this foundation, and we help also with consent management, which has become very, very difficult because people think of consent as cookie banners, but you don't have cookies on mobile apps or in store or on your phone. So how do you ensure consent, which is another big issue from a privacy perspective? How do you know what to retain, what not to retain? Because with privacy, the laws now are you can't just store everything forever. If you don't have a business need for it, you've got to have an operational retention or minimization program.
Mm-hmm.
From a e-discovery as well as incident response or internal investigation, having the ability to forensically collect information so that you know exactly what happened and you can dive much deeper than if you're not collecting forensically. So we've got a very broad set of capabilities to help legal departments manage all these different areas that they're being challenged with today.
Yeah. Fascinating industry. One more quick question because of this approved acquisition. So how does Zapproved fit into the legal GRC sort of framework?
Well, I mean, certainly as you mentioned, I think earlier, Zapproved has always been very focused on e-discovery, and that's Exterro's background as well. And it's a main component of our business, and we're spending a lot of money innovating in the e-discovery process and how we help organizations respond more quickly, as well as in a very defensible and much less expensive way than has been done in the past. So Zapproved just fits in right with that. And then taking their expertise in customer experience and then enabling us to just do that much better with our customers across all of these different areas is really how they fit in.
Awesome. And I imagine there's some real estate savings, right? You guys are going to.
Yeah, no, I laugh because we did shut down the headquarters for Exterro, and we've moved into the former Zapproved headquarters. So
that's awesome.
I had to update all of our email signatures with our new address. But Zapproved had a much cooler office and in a much cooler part of town, and it's more fun to be in that office than it was in Exterro was out in a suburb. So we're right downtown Portland now in a pretty cool area.
Okay, cool. All right, we're almost out of time. Before we go, anything you want to, anything new, anything interesting? I mean, aside from the obvious, that you want to share? And I've got to ask you, what's going to be the deal with the user conference?
Oh, that's a great one. So one of the things I keep talking about, the customer experience expertise of the Zapproved company. The woman running their customer experience, she and her entire team are continuing on with Exterro. Her name is Jennifer Kershane. She's awesome. And not only does she run our customer support and customer experience internally for Exterro now, but she has always been the driver on the Prex conference that they held. So she is now responsible, working with obviously my team and others in the company, on our fall user conference. So we had Infusion, they had Prex. We are going to meet again this year in September.
Get ready, folks. Here it comes.
Yep. We're going to meet again in September in New Orleans, and it's going to be called Exchange. So
nice.
The brandings are going away, but we are doing it. We're going to take the best of what they did. And, we always had it as a user conference and didn't invite non-customers. Theirs was more open to everyone. So we're combining that. We're going to be sending out some early announcements of that this week. So everybody listening, get a sneak peek on save the date, September 19th, 20th, 21st, I think it is, in New Orleans. We'd love to see you all there.
Fantastic. And ACEDS has been big supporters of both. I've been to both. They're both fantastic shows. So everybody look forward to that as we get back out to normal in-person stuff. All right, Bill, this has been fantastic. Just tell our listeners quickly, how can they get in touch if they're interested in anything Exterro?
Easiest thing is go to our website, exterro.com. Be very easy to let us know what your interests are. But feel free to call us or send us an email. But I think the website is probably the easiest way.
Fantastic. Bill, thank you very much for taking some time with us today. Everyone, thank you for joining us. If you are interested in our short form interviews, you can find ACEDS recordings on our LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and our YouTube channel. Check out our website for a list of upcoming live streams and so forth. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Bill, be well.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mike.